We are on with a Gophers postcast. We have to talk about what just happened with the Gophers versus Ohio State game and get ready for the final game of the week. We've got Ron Johnson. We're going to have Adam Weber, and I'm Kane Rob. Let's jump in.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, so this is the Locked On Golden Gophers postcast. We're jumping in live after the Gophers lose 37-3, a tough one, but I am joined here by Gophers legend Adam Weber and Gophers legend Ron Johnson. We're going to dive into the nitty-gritty and talk about this game. The Gophers lose another two players to injury in Darius Green and Zach Evans, but it was half-hearted the entire game. Ron, what are your immediate thoughts coming off of this loss?
Honestly, it was not good. There's nothing I can really say to salvage this. Those 3 points. I don't care what kind of what do they always say? I forgot what they call moral victory they want to get out of this. There is none. Like, there were a lot of plays I would say the coaches called that were well, and the receivers didn't execute, the quarterbacks didn't execute, or the offensive line didn't execute. And then there were some plays the coaches called and I'm speaking mainly offensively, and you're just like, man. And then defensively, honestly, like I feel like for the most part, Marvin Harrison didn't even have to get used. You know, it's like having a Mercedes or a Ferrari in the garage, and you're like, I'm gonna just take the Ford Explorer out or something. You know, like it's just like I'm gonna take old Trusty out. I'm gonna run some basic stuff. I don't want to show Michigan anything right now anyway. And that's what it felt like. Like it felt like Marvin Harrison Jr. probably didn't even need to play this game. And they still would have had the same result because he only had, 3 or 4 catches, 1 touchdown, which that 1 touchdown should have been negated if the Gophers did what I said on the pregame show, which is double him the entire game. And they, for the most part, stay in the cover 2 shell. But then down in the red zone, that's the tough part. I would have treated him like Calvin Johnson. In the red zone, goal line, I'm putting 2 guys on him like I'm a gunner. And like he's the gunner, and I'm putting 2 guys on him and saying, look, beat me with somebody else besides this kid. And it wouldn't have mattered anyway. You take his touchdown away, they still lose by 30. So, it's tough.
For sure. And I'm going to push it right over to you, Adam. What are your immediate thoughts here? It felt like there was a lot of conservative play from the offense in a game that was 2 scores or less in that first half. What did you take away from the Gophers' effort in this one, or the way they decided to run it in the early on stages of this game?
Yeah, when you're playing a team as talented as Ohio State, and given the season that the Gophers have had, you're hoping to see a little bit more being aggressive. But then again, PJ and that staff, they traditionally have been, they're conservative, right? They're going to kind of play their style of ball regardless of who they're playing. It works if you're Michigan, it works if you're Ohio State, but if you don't have the dudes to back it up and you make mistakes, costly mistakes, you just can't do it. PJ wants to an ideal game. You're 40 rushes, 55 rushes, and you have the ball for 40 minutes. But when you play a game against Ohio State at their place, you're gonna have to do something special, some creative plays, find ways to get them on their heels, and we just weren't able to do that. And I didn't see that really at all. And it felt like almost like the Michigan game where after Ohio State went up the 2 scores. We kind of put it into let's just run the game out, run the clock out, and let's get to the Wisconsin game. Both teams were ready to go on to the next week, it seemed like, after that, once the score was kind of insurmountable.
Adam, I have a question for you, though. So when you look at this game as a quarterback, so I want you to put yourself in a quarterback's mindset. Now, I get it. Ethan Kaligmanis, I guess freshman on the field, but he's been here for 2 years now. When you look at Ethan Kaligmanis, and if I'm the quarterback's coach, and you've been a coach, you've seen offenses in the NFL, college. If I were to come to you the week of the Ohio State game and up to the season, I'm kind of putting it together, but I got a bevy of plays. If I'm coming to you, you're quarterback, I'm coordinator, and I say, hey, we're going to try something different because we probably have no chance to win this game. But what I want you to do is I want you to go no huddle the entire game. You and I are going to work together to try to see what you see. And then if you see, man, here's the 2 or 3 routes or combos you can run. If you see zone, here's what you can do. If you count 3 in the box, here's what you can do. Is that something a quarterback could easily, not easily, but, get to the line and be able to work with his coach and figure out during the game?
Yeah, when I was coaching and even when I was playing, you find different way. How can you create some type of momentum? How can you create an advantage? And sometimes that is changing up the tempo of what you're doing on offense. I always felt like I performed better in like a 2-minute situation or 2-minute style of offense, where you're able to kind of play fast, and you get into a flow of it, but that can backfire too as well very easily. Again, when you go 3 and out and then you put your defense out there and you've only ate up 40 seconds of clock or whatever it is. So that can happen. But then again, what do you have to lose here? I think Vegas had this game pretty dang close to what it ended up showing, what the final score was. But yeah, I would love to see it again with Ethan. What's disappointing, and for the whole entire team really, but if you want to focus on the quarterback, is we got to see him a little bit last year and everyone was very exciting. Got to see some really, stuff that we didn't see out of Tanner or what we've seen in the previous years. And we're like, hey, shoot, we got a kid here. This will be exciting. And it just hasn't happened this season. So it's almost like it's been he's kind of fallen back a little bit from the progression that he had, or he's showing late last year. So that's been disappointing. Towards the end of the game, again, the game's out of hand, but I would have loved to see, he got a little, his mechanics get a little out of whack. And I don't think it was a problem early in the year because, we beat Nebraska and he knew he was throwing the ball decent, but your mechanics really come back to bite you in those critical situations and against good opponents. And seeing him not really going through progressions, it looked like really feeling the pressure. He took that last sack and he really didn't need to. Then again, right. I don't know if he had any underneath a guy to drop it down to or anything, but he kind of ran into that sack. And that's the type of stuff that's like, hey, regardless of who you're playing, man, you're going to be our dude for these next couple of years. We got to start working on this. You hate to say it, but it's like you got to learn from this stuff. And going into this last game where you still have a chance to get bowl eligible, salvage this season, beat a rival, would have loved to see a little bit more in this game. And hopefully we can see it next week against Wisconsin.
I want to stay on that note with both of you. So heading into this kind of season outlook of what has happened with Ethan Kalikmas's ups and downs, and there's been some positives, but there's also been some negatives. How do you head into the next season? Do you go to the transfer portal to have someone to push in competition, or have the guys kind of push each other to see who comes out the best? Or do you keep fully investing, or what is the approach that the Gophers should be looking at as they head into an off season as well?
Well, I'll say, yeah, you do. You hit the portal. You have to. Not so much to say this is your replacement, but there should never be a chance on the field. And this is the problem with college football in the transfer portal, to be honest. When I played, and Adam probably dealt with this too, there were always guys behind you that were either ready to play eventually or could play right away or were good enough to eventually play. And not to say they were better than you, but they were right there with you. Like you felt like you were competing a little bit. Now with the portal, when guys actually show that type of ability and they feel like they should be playing, they just transfer out. And I think that's the only issue you're going to find with trying to find somebody else to sit there, because if you do bring a guy in and he does start to threaten Ethan, does Ethan stay? And I think that's the tough thing about college football is he does have a kid coming in, the kid that committed, one of the top quarterbacks in the recruiting class. And he, reassured everybody, because everybody was like tweeting and talking about like, oh, is he going to leave now after PJ gets beat by Michigan? And he kind of reaffirmed his commitment to Minnesota. And so maybe that is the kid to come in. Maybe he realized, look, I'm going to redshirt for a year, and then one more year Ethan has to play, and then it should be my shot. So I'll be able to play as a redshirt sophomore. And that's what like Alabama does. That's what, you look at UCLA and Dante Moore. He was the number one player in the country out of Detroit Martin Luther King High School, goes to UCLA. Everybody's like, oh, he's the up and coming 6'5", 230-pound Cam Newton, and he's struggling. When you look at completion percentage in the nation, he is 103rd, and he was the best player in the nation coming out of high school. So it's not like an absolute recipe. Because if Dante Moore, because I know the kid, he went to my high school. If he comes to Minnesota, because I know at one point early when he was like a sophomore, Minnesota, PJ Fleck went to Detroit. He went to the camp, saw him. So it could have happened. But what will we have gotten out of him? Not to say he's not great. He's not going to be great down the road, because he was a Gatorade All-American. He was the best player in the country. He's better than, what's his name? Arch Manning. But he's struggling right now at UCLA as a freshman. But that's the problem. You put a young kid in front of the Wolves, it's going to be some struggles. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of that right now. I don't know. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, no, I would agree. So I remember like when I was playing, I always felt like I always practiced like I was the number 2 guy. Like I always had to prove myself every single day. And I hope every starter or every guy on the team plays like that, and that gets you better as a team. But yeah, this new day and age of the transfer portal is different. I would hate to be a coach these days where you not only have to recruit high school kids, but you have to recruit the kids on your team still so that they don't lose. And how do you create competition without upsetting somebody or losing somebody that may want to go to a better opportunity? But I agree with you. I think it doesn't hurt to look. Now, my question would be, if we do go, yeah, there's my son here watching the game with me. Yeah, it was a tough one. Was when you look at the system, if I'm a kid in the portal or a high school kid, is this a system you want to go play with as a wide receiver or as a quarterback? Is this like, if I'm a running back, yeah, I would love to, right? Because you're going to get the ball. But you always have to be looking for somebody that can come in. You as fans or even as coaches, you're always wanting to find the best that's available. I just don't know what's out there. But Ethan has shown the signs. It's a matter of how can we best get his best performance consistently. And we just haven't had that. So I don't know if that's a confidence thing, if it's a coaching thing. I think it has to come down to a little bit of confidence, right? Because that's everything as a quarterback. If you lose your confidence, I don't care how good or talented you are. If you don't have confidence, you're not going to be able to perform. So I would love to be able to see like Ethan really take this season and watch the film, which is the hardest part, right? And really be critical on yourself, and then take this last opportunity to end the season on a high note, hopefully, and then go into this off season and re-earn his spot and take it to the next level.
I love those thoughts. I want to get a little bit more into some season talk, and then we're going to talk about the Wisconsin matchup coming up, which will have a bowl game on the line as well. We're going to talk about that coming up next, but first we have to talk about some friends of the show. First, I got to talk to you about Prize Picks. If you like daily fantasy sports made easy, then boy, do I have the thing for you, because they have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous amount of selections of players and stat types to choose from, which makes them the #1 daily fantasy sports app. All you got to do is press simply over or under on players, yardage, totals, touchdowns, over points, rebounds, whatever sport you're looking at. And if you get it right, if you string them all together, you can win up to 25 times your money. Now, if you were on this Gophers game picking your stat lines, you probably would have wanted to press the under, and you probably cashed in on today, but we'll have more coming up for the Wisconsin matchup. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you will get up to $100 matched in a deposit. You put in 100, you'll get 100 back. That's $200 immediately in your account with promo code LOCKEDONCollege. prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, so we are talking after this hard loss, 37-3 against Ohio State, but we're giving more of a season-long outlook, a little bit of things that we can hopefully take into next season or even into this next matchup against Wisconsin. And I want to ask both of you, with the new schools coming to the Big Ten, seeing how this season has went and some of the games that we've dropped, like Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, which felt like they should have been wins, how do you review this season? What is Minnesota going to honestly have to ask itself when it comes to this offseason?
Yeah, this offseason, when you look at UCLA, USC, the teams are going to have to play next year. You even add Oregon and Washington, which are going to go to the Big Ten championship scenario situation. You take away the East and the West, so now we don't even know what the format. I hope they do a quad system. When you think about like what the NFL became of the quads within the 4 teams and so on and so forth, like I feel like the Big Ten at some point maybe needs to look into that. One, you create more inter-squad rivalry. So you put Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa in one, and you throw one other team in there. I wouldn't mind that, because then you can go play so-and-so, or, I think you got to do 5 teams got to be in there. You can go play so-and-so, and that team now wins, and then they go play the next team, and then you get a Final Four, and then you get a Final Two, and now the Big Ten creates a football Final Four. One, selfishly, from a money standpoint. Two, it still gives the Gophers a chance to make the Big Ten championship. If you just go back to the old school ways, where just the top 2 teams are going to go to the championship, and that's what Michigan wants, and Ohio State, because I feel like they since it switched, they know that it's only one or the other. It can't be both anymore. And that's what we might get. And so if that goes back to that, it's going to become for a while, at least a Michigan, Ohio State, Big Ten championship every year. And then Minnesota is going to have to try to stay out of the basement. And so I think this offseason, the look needs to be of like, what are you going to be? Glenn Mason, if we were to put stars on his recruits, I don't even know what you would give some of us, but what you got out of us was NFL talent. You got dogs, you got guys willing to go put it on the line every play. And I think sometimes people look into these stars too much and who else has offered so-and-so and who else, like Marion Barber, Lawrence Maroney, myself, Adam Weber, Karan Riley, Styles G. White. I mean, you can go down the list of guys and, Eric Decker, Nate Triplett, Devondre Campbell. I know he came under Kill. I mean, you could, Antoine Winfield Jr. was under Kill. You can go Tyrone Carter. I mean, Willie Middlebrooks. Like, you can throw names out there and look at the talent that made it to the NFL. We didn't have the accolades and the stars per se, but what we were a good group of guys that can win you 8 or 9 games. And I think that's what Minnesota needs to focus on, because you win 8 or 9 games, you might end up knocking off 1 or 2 giants you're not supposed to beat, and you put yourself in that conversation. But that's the formula Glenn Mason had. He ran the crap out the ball. You switch over to like Jed Fish, and I know Adam dealt with that. They were a passing team. Like, you just have to figure out who you are. Like, what do you have, who you are, and what are you going to do with it? When you had Eric Decker and Ernie Wheelwright, and you say, you know what, we're going to pass the ball. Like, we got Matt Spaeth. Like, we're passing team. When I was there, we passed the ball my senior year. Before that, we ran the ball. When I left, they ran the ball because they had Lawrence Maroney and Marion Barber. It's like, everybody, you got to ride the ebbs and flows of what you have. And I think sometimes people get stuck in like, this is what I want to do. And I think that's what this offense needs to be looked at. What do you want to be? What's your identity? Because roll the boat is great, but what is the identity of the offense? What is the identity? We already kind of know the identity of the defense, but what is the identity? Like, you look at the Vikings defense, the identity is we're going to blitz the crap out of you, and we don't care what the down and distance is. Brian Flores has stuck to that. That's why I heard on the broadcast, Ohio State says, we're a 3-safety team. Brian Flores was already doing that. But now Ohio State actually says we live off our 3 safeties, and everybody's like, oh man, that's a great philosophy. Brian Flores was already doing that. He was living off 3 safeties in Miami. He brought it to Minnesota. It works. And so what is the Gopher? Get an identity. What are you going to be? Like, Ohio State this year was Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, literally, that was their identity. That's okay to be a one-man team, but this offseason for the Gophers, with all these new guys coming, you got to find an identity of what your offense is going to be.
Yeah, and to that point, the Big Ten's only going to get harder, right? It's going to get more complicated with these teams coming in. Travel's going to get harder. All the things only get more difficult for us as Minnesota. And we this season, where we could have positioned ourselves against a really tough schedule to, a few games ago where we actually had a chance, we could have backed into the West, right, and won it. And we found a way to let that slip through our hands. And now, in looking ahead, it only gets harder. And Ron, to your point, when it comes to recruits and recruiting stars and all that stuff, I think I read somewhere, I've heard where, that.
I think we briefly lost him quick right there.
No, sorry, dog. Like 3.5 stars. 3 stars are like the average type of guy in the NFL. So to your point, development is huge. And I think in PJ's style or his culture, it's hard to get those top recruits, those 5-4-star guys. We're just not going to get them. So you need to develop, right? And then now with the transfer portal, how do you develop guys and keep them here long enough to develop them? That's the battle there. So it's going to be a challenge. The definition of insanity, right, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. If we want to do something different, changes are going to have to be made. We got to look at it differently. What we see what the Vikings do with KOC, it's dynamic offensive play calling and play design. And on defense with Flores, again, being very aggressive, they're putting themselves in positions to win games where I feel like we just this season, especially for Gophers, we kind of just have been showing up and be like, this is what we are. And if it works, great. We'll, again, hold the ball for 40 minutes and win by 3 points, and that's fine, right? But I'd love to see us really take the pieces we have in place, the players we have, and maximize their abilities instead of forcing that square peg into a circle hole type deal.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. The last question I'm going to ask here before we turn our look towards Wisconsin and the rivalry matchup and whatnot, I do want to ask, is there any positive takeaways that you saw in this game that the Gophers can maybe hone in on moving forward into the final game season? Anything that stood out to you from this one against Ohio State?
Yeah, that's on you, Adam.
Our kicking game. We can kick field goals. A 54-yarder is pretty impressive, right? So, no. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, not really, right? This is a very deflating game. We knew it was going to be tough, all that stuff. But shoot, you look at like what was the spread against Bowling Green when Bowling Green beat us last year, 2 years ago, right? I think it was like 30-some points. So those type of upsets can happen. Shoot, and even if we didn't win this game, to at least compete would have been refreshing. So challenging, but I do know we're playing a really defeated Wisconsin team. It's not the Wisconsin of old, or at least not yet. So they're kind of in their transitional phase. So hopefully we can sneak a win, get bowl eligible, get out of this season, get those extra practices, all that stuff. Win a game at home, get keep the axe here, all that stuff. So have everybody, all the donors, everybody happy that we at least end the season on a high note, and get to a somewhat of a, I don't even know what bowl game would be, probably a lower tier bowl game. But either way, it's really those extra practices that you're getting, right, and development. So I don't think there's much we can take away from this game. There was really no highlights. Again, on offense, I think they showed a stat on TV where we had 6 first downs and Ohio State had 6 on that one drive alone. Yeah. So I don't know if it's, as coaches, you just say, let's not even watch the tape. Let's just move on to Wisconsin. But
yeah, to Adam's point, I was gonna say, like, I would say throw the film away. I wouldn't throw the film away, but I would say, I don't know if there's much we need to watch. The one thing I would show, this is what I would show, and I don't know if I would show it because I grew up in a different era. I grew up in the MFU, screw you, shut up, just play football. But we're going to have a respectful conversation after. We're going to be boys on the bus. We're going to kick it in practice. But when it's time to get your ass chewed out, you're going to get your tail chewed out. And that's just how I grew up with my dad. That's how I grew up. Like, I mean, we were a different era of kid. We used to get, which is probably not great, I don't know if it is or not, but we used to get paddled in high school when we made mistakes. Like, and I mean like bad mistakes, like stayed out past curfew. Somebody got drunk, whatever, cursed out a teacher, got kicked out of class, like stuff that really needed correction before you ended up kicked out of school or kicked off the team. We were a different mindset. And so I look at players now, and when I think about what could be done, and maybe this is in private because you don't want to publicly in front of the whole team show them where they did wrong, because praise in public, kind of discipline in private. I would put together clips of mistakes every guy made that I think I need to sit down and have a conversation with and show them. Daniel Jackson running a slant route versus man coverage, double slant. If you have double slant, the inside guy is going to go now because he wants to clear it out space for you. There's no reason to dance and dance and dance. I hate that because Stephon Diggs can do it because he scares the crap out of DBs. Jamar Chase can do it and Justin Jefferson can do it because DBs are scared. Daniel Jackson, you're not scaring Ohio State's DBs, so there's no purpose of doing that. You watch Marvin Harrison run a slant. He's just boom, 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 old school. Like, why? Because of his dad. Like, his dad's like, dude, don't do all this. You 6'4", bro. Like, attack him now, get inside. And you saw his touchdown. One step, bang, go now. It was a now route. When you think about Brevin Spanford dropping the pass, the zone run and the offensive line getting spooked about a potential outside blitz, but you let the inside guy go, and he blew up the run game. Little stuff like that where it's like, look, it's a run play inside. F the guy outside. Screw the guy outside. Why are you worried about the guy outside? Deal with the front four. Let this guy still blitz. He's going to run by us. Let the quarterback, because it's a zone read, I can see him to my strong side. Let me handle him. And so little stuff like that, I think, you have to be able to like hit home. Like, here was the right call, but you guys didn't execute. You dropped this pass. You ran the wrong route. Blah, 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 blah. Like, you got to chew into them a little bit so they understand. And I think that's the only thing you can take from this film.
For sure. We're going to move on to Wisconsin. That's what we're talking about coming up next. quick word from our friends over at Athletic Brewing Company, because they are amazing in the non-alcoholic beer game. So if you want great tasting, award-winning non-alcoholic beers that have beat out full-strength beers in global competitions, then you need to head on over to athleticbrewing.com and give them a look. And if you like the varieties and the styles that the beers have in different varieties and brands, well, Athletic Brewing also has that with their non-alcoholic brews as well. They have 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. And the best part of all is no hangovers. So head on over to athleticbrewing.com or check out their offerings at a store near you. But if you go online to athleticbrewing.com, use promo code LOCKEDON for 15% off your first online order. That's LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Athletic Brewing Company and athleticbrewing.com, and near beer and exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, let's wrap up this postcast. We have the Axe matchup coming up, the big rivalry for Minnesota, and a bowl game on the line. So what are the biggest things that Minnesota has to do or clean up in preparation for this Wisconsin game? Both teams are struggling. Both teams could come out with a victory. So what's the big things Minnesota has to look inward for this week?
Well, the good thing is they're not going to deal with a receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr. for the rest of their life. The next one is like the big runs or the explosive run plays by Ohio State. We don't know if Braylon Allen's going to play. We'll see tonight if he even plays against Nebraska, because I think 2 hours before kickoff, it might have just be starting right now. So we'll see if Braylon Allen doesn't play against Nebraska, he probably doesn't play against Minnesota because he's getting ready for the NFL and he wants to be 100% healthy, because he'll probably be late first round, maybe second round pick. He's a NFL prototype. If he does play, you got to be able to shoot him out. I remember playing against Ron Dane, not me personally have to tackle him, but watching him for a couple years, and as a Heisman winner, let me be real with that. I know our week preparation going into playing against Ron Dane was shoot his legs out. Multiple people have to hit him, and rally tackle. You can't try to be one-on-one in the hole. And that's what Wisconsin run. I mean, even if it's not Braylon Allen, they have running backs and their offensive line is big and strong. So going into this game, it's 9-on-7 drill every day of practice. Like, you got to go 9-on-7 live. You got 1 week left. There's no reason. Like, if you lose, you rest up anyway. So you should have some heavy week of 9-on-7 drill. Get ready to tackle. Linebackers have to be ready. But the problem, and we've talked about this, the youthfulness of the linebackers. They have not, like Maverick Baranowski and Cody Lindenberg, both not playing, is tough. And so now you're asking these younger, inexperienced linebackers have to come in and deal with a run game like that. And that's why I would say I would drill the crap out of them out of that. Plus, then also in 9-on-7, you still have the play action to the tight end, because that's what Wisconsin does. So that's kind of what I really hit on. I'm not scared of their receivers. I'm worried about their run game and that pop pass to their tight ends.
Yeah, and I think, Ron, you hit on it. Like, coming from this game, hit on it was there are plenty of mistakes that we just made. It's not like Ohio State outmanned us. Like, there's definitely situations where that happened, but we made a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of linebacker run-throughs. You hit onto the Daniel Jackson against man, the slant dancing. Those are stuff you can teach up, right? And you can get better. So as cliche as it is going to this final game, it's like, it's not about Wisconsin. It's about being the best that we can be with the players we have. And how does Rossi protect those inexperienced linebackers? That's going to be a challenge, but it is what it is, right? You can wish and want all you want to have more experience, better talent, but with the team we have, we're capable of beating Wisconsin, and that's how we have to go into this week, is as they do every single week, is this is a 1-game championship season, and that's how I have to look at it, right? Like, move on from this Ohio State game, plenty of stuff to learn from, but let's just play our best football that we can at this time of year to give everybody that sweet feeling of just winning against a rivalry game, regardless of what the records are. It would be great, right, if we were playing, if the game mattered like it would for the Michigan-Ohio State game. But for us and Wisconsin, this is that game for us, for both fan bases to have that pride. So there'll be plenty of stuff, and coaches will talk about, but plenty of stuff to clean up. I agree with you, Ron, too. It's like, I'm sure they already do 9-on-7 a bunch in practice, but yeah, maybe go live, Anything is open going into this week because we need to win this game. This has to happen. If we don't win this game, it's going to be a long off season.
Oh, yeah.
People are already starting to call for PJ a little bit, right? The noise is starting to ramp up a little bit. The heat is picking up. If you lose this game against Wisconsin, you'll start hearing a lot of noise for what's next. So to avoid that, to nip that in the butt, you're going to have to play your best football, give it with the players we have possible this next week.
Absolutely. And I have a curious question for y'all, because Ethan cooked versus Wisconsin last year, his best game of his young career, probably by far. So when you, as both of you have been players for the Gophers and you've had some absolute balling games, when you go and face a team like that you see again that next season, do you have a little bit of an extra chip on your shoulder, a little bit more confidence to you, knowing you had success last year, knowing it's a different team, a different strategy or different core personnel, but you knew that you did well last year? Does that bring a little extra emphasis, maybe an extra confidence for Ethan heading into the last week?
For a receiver, me personally, no. Like it was different DBs and schemes every year, depending on the team. Like Ohio State, I killed them. The next year we came back, I had an okay game, but it was just a different group of DBs. Wisconsin and Iowa, I don't think you need anything to really treat this like a big game. Like no matter what our record, when we played Wisconsin my senior year, we had no shot at going to a bowl game. We were 4 and I think 6 going, because we only played 11 games back then. We were like 4 and 6, I think, going into that last game, and we beat Wisconsin. And we didn't care that we weren't going to a bowl game. We just knew we had to beat Wisconsin. And so that's the mindset too. Like you shouldn't have to get up for a football game because you only get so many anyway in college. That was my senior day, my senior year, had no shot at going to a bowl game, but I still was like, you know what, we're going to still go out here and put on the show and try to get this axe. And that's what I hope like these seniors do, because they're going into this game 5 and 6. They do have an opportunity to be qualified for a bowl game, but it still shouldn't matter. But no, for me personally, year in and year out, I don't think it mattered what I did the year before. I think you do kind of look at like the season weaknesses of teams. Like if this team, struggles at defending the pass, or this DB has been terrible, then you kind of can say, hey man, come, let me get it. But I don't know. Adam can speak from a quarterback standpoint on defense.
I don't know if the prior year success carries into the following year. I look at it as an entire team. This is the potentially last game. Hopefully they can win and get an extra one, but this is the last time to stamp your legacy of this season, right? You only have so many games to play as a Gopher, and that's your legacy, right? And how do you want to be remembered? Beating Wisconsin is always something that's important. That's something I can say, we never did for my 4 years that I was there, and that eats at you. The fact that they're now they're back-to-back winners.
I think we saw where he was going with on that one, but I want to wrap it up with this real quick. Last question, and we'll wrap up this postcast after a tough loss, but looking towards Wisconsin, does potentially beating both rivals give a little bit of an extra stamp to the season, knowing it wasn't as successful as you wanted, knowing, the bowl game might not be as high level of bowl game as you'd want if you were to get the win, but just keeping both of those victories in the same season, which doesn't happen too often, does that feel like a bit of success for the younger players as they continue to carry forward, and for the seniors as a send-off? What are the thoughts on potentially winning both rivalry games to close out the season?
Yeah, Adam?
I would say, listen to PJ, right? He said when he first took the job, all the donors said, as long as you beat Iowa and Wisconsin, you'll be safe. So this is an important one. But, yeah, there's no question that this is rivalry games are important. Home games are important. Love to see the fans show up. Hopefully it's not a sea of red. But even if it is, let's shut them up, get a good win. And yeah, regardless of the bowl game, it's those extra practices that are huge. I mean, that's so much development happens in those extra practices that you miss out on if you're not bowl eligible. And it's just such a major step back in the progress of the PJ Fleck era by not becoming bowl eligible here. It's such a massive step back that'll be really, it's so hard to overcome. So yes, beating Iowa, beating Wisconsin, very, very important. It doesn't fix everything, but it sure helps.
Yeah, for me, I'd say, like, I thought about this too today. I would rather be 10-2 and lose to Iowa, Wisconsin than to be 5-6 heading into a chance to beat Wisconsin to have both trophies. I'm just like, we could say whatever we want. I think that's tongue in cheek when donors say crap like that. They would definitely rather be 10-2 and not even sniff the axe or the pig every year, because if you move forward the way the Big Ten is going to look, 10-2, I think the way it's going to look, and I don't know, maybe Ohio State and Michigan still might be undefeated, but you would have an opportunity. Well, probably not, because then you probably beat one of them. Would give you a chance to be in the Big Ten championship, or at least a better bowl, other than like beating Wisconsin, because Wisconsin and Iowa in the West, or the way it is now, if you're 10-2 and you lose to those two, attrition and just cannibalism, they're going to take each other out with the rest of the West. And so, yeah, 10-2. Lose to those two, I'll take that over 5-6 and beating those two, or 6-6 even and beating those two. That's just me.
No, I appreciate the perspective, and I know the Gophers fans will love to hear all of that, those insights from former legends as well. So that's going to do it for us on today's postcast. I want to thank both of you for joining the show and talking about this Gophers loss against Ohio State, but what we can look forward to and what we need to turn inwards for that Wisconsin matchup. That's going to do it for us on this Gophers postcast. We will see you next week after the Wisconsin game. Until then, row the boat, Sky Umago Gophers, and be sure to follow over at Locked On Minnesota Sports.